The morning sunlight streamed through the glass of the 32nd floor meeting room, creating sharp, razor-like streaks of light. The air was thick with the scent of expensive coffee, mixed with the chill of the office traps already laid out. Edison slowly pushed his tablet across the polished mahogany desk. His fingers tapped lightly on the surface, producing a rhythmic tap, tap, like a countdown clock. On the screen was a blurry image, taken from a security camera on the street corner across the street. I was entering the Helion Corporation building, our arch-rival, last Thursday night. It wasn't a fatal blow, but it was more than enough evidence for what the executive board had quietly decided beforehand after the budget cuts. "We've received very disturbing reports about your after-hours activities, Arya," Edison said. His voice was even, the artificial tone of seasoned HR professionals accustomed to firing people without batting an eye, but his eyes were as cold as two pebbles. "Your employment contract clearly states in Clause 4, it is strictly forbidden to work for, advise on, or provide services to another company in the same industry while you are employed here. This constitutes a serious breach of the duty of loyalty." Sitting beside him, Finn, the operations manager, a pragmatist always trying to blame the technical department whenever the system was slow or laggy, smirked zero, a half-smile full of contempt. He clasped his hands together, leaning back in his executive chair. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of betrayal, Arya. You know we're in a critical period for finalizing our quarterly financial report. Your affair with Helion is nothing short of a stab in the back for the company." I watched them both. Strangely, I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, not even a hint of surprise. My chest felt strangely light, as if gravity had just released its grip on me. For the past 3 years, I had lived like a spring, compressed to its limit, and now, that spring had suddenly snapped. The liberation came from the most unexpected place. "You are fired, effective immediately," Edison continued, pushing the pre-printed termination notice, signed by the CEO, toward me. "Security will escort you back to your desk to gather your personal belongings. You are not permitted to touch any company electronic equipment." I didn't argue. I didn't offer an explanation. I knew that in the corporate world, once they had this piece of paper, any excuses were pointless. They didn't need the truth. They just needed an excuse to cut a high-paid employee or someone who knew too much. I simply nodded, pulled out the ID badge from my shirt, and gently placed it on the wooden table. The sound of the plastic card hitting the wood was dry and sharp. "You two are right." I looked directly into Finn's eyes, a slight smile on my face. "I should focus on a single position." Both Edison and Finn froze. A fleeting look of confusion crossed their faces for a quarter of a second before they regained their professional composure. They had prepared for tears, pleas, or a furious outburst, a banging of the table, and a tirade. They had prepared legal scenarios to deal with if I resisted. But they hadn't anticipated this calm, even frighteningly relieved acceptance from me. What they couldn't see was a 1,000-pound rock had just been lifted from my shoulders. 3 years of extreme anxiety, 3 years of single-handedly managing the entire digital security system of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. 3 years of waking up at 3 a.m. to false alarms and attacks from Eastern European hackers, all vanished in an instant. Finn cleared his throat, slightly uncomfortable with my composure. He pushed another piece of paper over. "We need you to hand over all the top-level administrator passwords, hardware encryption keys, and system access permissions before you leave this room." I smiled, the most genuine smile I'd given in 3 years. Everything has been stored and updated in the IT department's internal database, knowledge base, completely in accordance with the ISO standard operating procedures you approved last month. A perfect lie. The documents were real, but they were written in the style of correct procedure, but unusable. It's like giving someone who's never flown a plane a 2,000-page manual on jet engine mechanics and telling them to take off. Technically, it's perfectly complete, not a single comma missing. But in practice, it's completely useless without systems thinking, real-world experience, and most importantly, the custom code snippet stored uniquely in my brain every week. As the security guard, a burly young man named Marcus, the one I usually poured coffee for during my night shifts, escorted me back to my desk. The atmosphere in the office suddenly froze. My colleague's eyes turned toward me. The clicking of keyboards stopped. replaced by whispers that rose like a tidal wave. Arya fired? Are you kidding? Who's going to run this system? I heard she was spying for Helion. Shh, keep your voices down, look. I quietly packed my few personal belongings into a small cardboard box. 3 years of dedication to a Fortune 500 corporation, and my possessions consist of a ceramic mug with a chipped handle, a small, miraculously surviving succulent plant that withered despite my neglect of watering while I was on duty, and a thick notebook filled with hand-drawn network architecture diagrams. Intricate Byzantine structural diagrams that only I in the world truly understand how they connect. From his soundproof glass office, Arlo, the vice president of technology, silently observed the escort. He stood there, teacup in hand, his face expressionless, his eyes unreadable. He made no move to intervene, even though he knew better than anyone what would happen to this company if I left. He was the one who signed the budget cut order for my department to save his own year-end bonus. Marcus escorted me down the long corridor to the revolving door of the main hall. He looked around and said softly, his voice full of remorse, "I'm so sorry, Arya. I was just following orders." "I know, Marcus. Thank you for your night shifts," I smiled, stepping through the revolving door. A cool spring breeze swept over my face. I stopped on the granite steps, taking a deep breath, my chest filled with fresh air. It felt like the first time I'd truly breathed, without the smell of central air conditioning, without the pungent smell of burnt plastic from overloaded servers. Just as I reached my old sedan, my phone in my pocket vibrated, a message from Vega, Helion's director of security. "Still meeting at my office at 2 p.m. today, Arya." I quickly typed my reply, without a moment's hesitation. "Same here. And good news, from now on, I can officially accept your full-time job offer." 3 years of building an empire for someone else was more than enough. 3 years of being invisible. The skeleton keeping this entire colossal entity running, while others sat in air-conditioned rooms, showing off figures and basking in the glory and 7-figure bonuses. 3 years of ignored security vulnerability warnings, rejected personnel proposals due to lack of budget, and promotions that always went through a different route without my name on it. Now, it was all over. I started the car, the engine roaring like a silent declaration of war. The countdown to their downfall began, and they didn't even know what awaited them. To help you understand why my departure was a death sentence for my former company, let's rewind 3 years. My name is Arya Wesley. And until those fateful 40 minutes in the boardroom, I was the lead network security architect at a Fortune 500 financial technology firm. More precisely, I was the only one left in that position. That wasn't the company's original plan. When I was poached from a promising security startup, my team was supposed to have 5 people: a lead architect, 2 threat analysts, an operations engineer, and an incident response specialist. I still vividly remember Arlo's promises during our interview at a fancy restaurant. He looked at me, his eyes shining with genuine passion, or at least he was acting convincingly. "We're building a world-class security team, Arya. The company is migrating its entire infrastructure to a hybrid cloud, and we need a genius mind like yours to lead a specialized team focused on our own core systems. The starting salary might not be the highest on the market, but the challenge and stock options will make you a millionaire." I, then 26, was full of enthusiasm and captivated by the incredibly complex technological challenge. Building a security architecture for a system processing millions of financial transactions per second. That's every engineer's dream. I signed the contract the very next day. But the realities of the corporate world slapped me in the face in the 3rd month. The first round of strategic cost optimization began. The company cut 2 newly hired threat analyst positions. By the 6th month, the only operations engineer on the team quit because a competitor offered 50% more. When I went to see Arlo to ask for a replacement, he handed me a thick file and said, "This is just a temporary austerity measure, Arya. Try to help the company through this quarter. We'll hire more next quarter when the financial situation improves." But next quarter turned into next year. Next year turned into, "Let's reassess after we finalize the merger with Apex Bank." The merger came and went. The workload tripled, client data ballooned, but my department's staff remained at a single number. 1. That was me. To keep the system from collapsing under the thousands of daily vulnerability scanning attacks from cybercriminal gangs, I was forced to manually build an extremely Byzantine security architecture. It was a system interwoven with automated solutions and custom scripts I wrote in Python and Go to patch vulnerabilities in outdated software that the company refused to upgrade. The system worked perfectly, but it operated on one crucial condition: my presence. Every week, the central authentication system automatically refreshed its SSL certificates, and due to a core architectural flaw in third-party software, this process always got stuck. Precisely at 4 p.m. every Monday, I had to execute a manual override command to allow data flow. Without that command, the entire authentication server would mistakenly believe the system was under attack and automatically lock down all user access ports. I wrote 5 emails warning about this issue, sending them directly to Arlo and attaching Finn. I made it clear: we need to spend $200,000 to upgrade the core software package, otherwise the system will be completely dependent on manual overwrites. If I'm not present, the system will lock down after 72 hours. Those emails all received an automated reply or a generic response from Arlo. Acknowledged, will be on the agenda for next quarter. Then, in the minutes of shareholder and board meetings, that action item mysteriously disappeared. They didn't want to spend money on something that wasn't broken. They preferred to use that money to redecorate the reception area or fund extravagant marketing campaigns. The height of this injustice occurred last winter. A notorious group of black hat hackers launched a distributed denial-of-service attack, combined with ransomware targeting the company's central servers. If successful, the credit card information and account balances of over 5 million customers would be sold on the dark web. The automatic alarm system went off at 2 a.m. on Christmas Day. While Arlo was at a 5-star resort in Hawaii, Finn was drinking champagne with his family. I had worked 72 hours straight without sleep. I survived on energy drinks and sandwiches bought from the convenience store downstairs. I was facing an organized attack campaign alone. When the servers started to overload and showed signs of crashing, I made a bold decision: completely isolate the infected network segment, redirect all clean traffic to a backup server cluster I had secretly built beforehand using last year's surplus budget, and write a real-time reverse engineering script to block the attacker's IP addresses. By 5 a.m. on Tuesday, the attack was completely thwarted. Not a single byte of customer data was leaked. The company's trading system remained uninterrupted for even a second. When the crisis was over, the executive board held a lavish celebratory party. The CEO stood on the stage, a glass of wine in hand, and declared to the entire company and the press, "Thanks to the strategic vision of the leadership team and a strong, proactive security culture we have built over the years, the corporation has repelled the most dangerous attack in its history." Thanks to the strategic vision of the leadership team and a strong, proactive security culture we have built over the years, the corporation has repelled the most dangerous attack in its history. The CEO received a $1.2 million year-end bonus from the board of directors for his outstanding risk management performance. Arlo was promoted to senior vice president and given a brand new BMW by the company. And me, the one who actually stayed up 3 nights straight, the one who saved that company from a scandal that could have led to bankruptcy? A week after the party, Arlo called me into his office. He flashed his familiar business smile and pushed a small envelope across the desk. "Arya, you did a great job this past Christmas. The company really appreciates your contribution. This is a special reward from the board." I opened the envelope. Inside was a $500 gift card from a supermarket chain and a Employee of the Month certificate printed on cheap coated paper. "You're our rock star, Arya." Arlo patted me on the shoulder, his voice full of condescension. "No one understands this system better than you. Keep up the good work. I'll pay special attention to your case during next year's salary review." I looked at the $500 gift card in my hand, then at Arlo's fake smile. In that moment, something deep inside me officially cooled. I realized what I was in this ruthless capitalist machine. I wasn't the invaluable person they often touted to exploit. I was just an invisible entity. I was infrastructure, the electricity running through walls, the underground water pipes. Nobody paid attention to me. Nobody appreciated me until it stopped working. I promised myself, this is the last time I'll save them. A month after Christmas, I attended the International Cybersecurity Conference in Boston. It was the only trip the company allowed me to attend, not because they wanted to train me, but because the organizers gave free tickets to the speakers. And Arlo wanted to use my name to enhance the company's corporate social responsibility report. There, I presented a paper on adaptive proactive defense architecture in a large financial environment. My presentation didn't use the empty theoretical jargon of textbooks. It was distilled from blood, sweat, and sleepless nights confronting real-world hackers. As soon as I stepped off the stage, a woman with a stylish short haircut and a powerful navy blue suit was waiting in the front row. She smiled, extending her hand. The best presentation I've heard in the last 5 years. Hello, Arya. I'm Vega, Chief Information Security Officer, CISO of Helion Corporation. Helion, a direct competitor, a relentless pursuer of my company in the digital finance market. I've read some of your technical papers before, Vega said, her eyes shining with the genuine insight and respect of someone with deep expertise, not the kind of clueless manager like Arlo. The practical implementation of this adaptive response model must be very complex. I'd love to hear more about how you've implemented these concepts in a large system. We sat together in a small cafe across from the convention center. What was initially planned to be a 15-minute conversation stretched into 4 hours. We talked about vulnerabilities in the improved TCP/IP protocol, how to optimize Layer 7 firewalls, and the latest malware trends. We carefully avoided discussing confidential information or sensitive company data. That's the minimum ethical standard. It was purely a high-level discussion between two experts. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like an intelligent person, respected and listened to. When the seminar ended, Vega handed me her business card. Arya, I know you're a key figure on the other side, but Helion is building a next-generation cybersecurity center. We need minds like yours. I know you can't leave right away because of your contract terms, but right now, we need an independent expert to evaluate our new architecture framework on paper, purely as a strategic consultant, working only on Saturdays or Sundays. No touching operational systems, no security breaches, no access to any information from your previous company, purely theoretical critique. Vega looked me straight in the eye and stated the fee. Your consulting fee for 8 hours of weekend work will be $8,000. That's exactly 1 month's current salary. I looked at the business card without a moment's hesitation. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, either legally or morally. I wasn't selling my old company's secrets. I was only selling my intellectual property and experience in my spare time, as permitted by law. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. Monday to Friday, I was the old donkey slaving away in my old office, enduring Finn's nagging, Arlo's empty promises, and carrying a dilapidated system for a paltry salary. But every Saturday, I'd change out of my business suit for a comfortable shirt and walk into Helion's opulent office. There, Vega and her team of engineers would be waiting at the door to greet me. Every suggestion I made was carefully noted down. Every solution I proposed was discussed and debated in a civil manner. They paid me, but more importantly, they restored my professional self-respect that my old company had trampled on, until last Thursday. When I parked my car 2 blocks from the Helion building to attend the final review meeting, I didn't expect that Finn, by chance, had seen my car while having lunch with a business partner. He hired a private investigator to photograph me entering the Helion building. The management of my former company thought they had me cornered, thinking they could use this as an excuse to fire me without paying any severance pay and make me the scapegoat for the shortcomings of the current technical system. They thought they were masters of Go, but they didn't know that they had just removed the only piece keeping their entire Go board from falling apart. Monday, 1 p.m. Just 4 hours after Marcus escorted me out of the building with a cardboard box in my hand, I was sitting in my new office at Helion headquarters. True to her word, Vega had secured me a permanent position, Chief Security Architect. My office was twice as large, with a modern glass desk, and through the large window, I could see the entire city, including my old company's tower 4 blocks away. Welcome to our team, Arya. Vega walked in, placing a professional security expert's laptop on my desk. All the hiring procedures are complete. Your base salary has tripled, and your stock options are effective immediately. And here, she stepped aside, gesturing toward the large room outside. Your team, 8 young, dynamic individuals, all graduates from prestigious universities or with practical experience from major technology companies, rose to their feet and applauded. They looked at me with admiration and curiosity, not with scrutiny or a desire to exploit me. "Hello, Chief Arya. We read your presentation in Boston. It's an honor to work with you." Ellis, a malware analyst with curly hair and intelligent eyes, spoke on behalf of the team. I stood speechless for a moment. Words suddenly choked in my throat. After 3 years working like a lonely ghost in a cold server room, I now had a team. I no longer had to shoulder the world alone. Meanwhile, at my old company office, Monday, 4:02 p.m., my personal phone rang. The screen displayed the name, Arlo. I didn't answer, placing the phone on the desk and putting it on silent mode. The phone vibrated violently against the glass and then went silent, leaving a voicemail notification. I put it on speakerphone so Vega could hear. "Arya, this is Arlo." His voice on the recording was a little hurried, but still tried to sound superior, nonchalant, as if nothing had happened. "Listen, there's a small issue, a technical hiccup on the central authentication server. Customers in the north are reporting login errors to the mobile app. It's probably just a time zone configuration error or something after you left. Where did you leave your handover note? Text me the fix code quickly. Thank you." Vega chuckled after hearing this. Does he still think I'm his free technical support employee? He wouldn't understand. I shook my head, turning off the phone screen. That's the automatic SSL certificate refresh cycle that I still have to manually overwrite at exactly 4 p.m. on Monday. I wasn't there today to enter the overwrite code. The authentication system started misinterpreting the entire login request as a session hijacking attack. It triggered Phase 1 self-defense mode, blocking 20% of the user's access ports. "What happens next?" Vega asked, his eyes full of amusement. "If they don't figure out how to modify the core configuration file of the third-party software within the next 24 hours, the system will automatically move to Phase 2, blocking all API connections to external banking partners." Tuesday, 9 a.m. As I walked into the coffee shop in the lobby of the Helion building to buy a latte, I saw a group of people gathered in front of a large TV screen in the corner. The TV was on CNBC, the financial news channel. A ticker below the screen caught my attention. X Financial Group's stock plummets 4.5% at the opening of trading due to widespread reports of system errors. I opened the X social media app, Twitter, on my phone. My old company's name was trending with tens of thousands of angry tweets from customers. What's going on with @X Financial Group's app? I need to transfer money to pay for goods, but the system keeps reporting account does not exist or 502 verification error. I haven't been able to access my e-wallet for over 5 hours. The customer service hotline is constantly busy. Looks like I'll have to withdraw all my money and transfer it to Helion. I smiled, leisurely sipped my coffee, and went up to the office. Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Arlo. It was a landline from the top executive office of my old company. I pressed the answer button. "Is this Ms. Arya Wesley?" A middle-aged woman's voice, serious and clearly tense. "Hello? This is Maeve, senior assistant to the CEO. I'm calling on direct instructions from the board of directors. Currently, the company's technology system is experiencing some major issues following a scheduled technical maintenance. The engineering team is having difficulty locating the faulty segment. The board of directors has decided to invite you back to the office this afternoon as an emergency independent consultant. We are willing to pay $2,000 for a 2-hour session to resolve this situation." I stood by the window of the Helion office, watching the white clouds drift lazily over the top of the tower opposite. "Ms. Maeve, please convey this message to your board of directors. As I told Mr. Edison and Mr. Finn on Monday morning, I am now a full-time employee of Helion Corporation. I am committed to strictly adhering to the confidentiality and anti-competitive clauses of my new company. I have no obligation, authority, or inclination to come back and fix the mess created by your incompetence. Have a good day." I hung up before the woman could respond. Tuesday, 11 p.m. As I was preparing to turn off the lights and go to bed at my apartment, my personal email inbox, Gmail, received an email flagged with an urgent red, urgent. System critical from Arlo's personal email address. The letter read, Arya, I'm sorry for what happened in the meeting room on Monday. It was a decision from Finn's HR and operations departments. I was completely caught off guard and unable to intervene in time. The situation is extremely critical. The authentication error has spread to the core banking system. All ATM withdrawals have been frozen. Our engineers tried to reboot the server cluster, but the system automatically activated the encryption lock. No one can decrypt it without the master key you configured. Please save me this time. Give me your own consulting price. Any number will be approved by the board of directors immediately. I stared at my phone screen. Rebooting the server cluster? Idiots. That's the worst thing that can happen when the system is in Stage 2 self-defense mode. A sudden restart causes the defense algorithms to interpret this as a physical intrusion, and it automatically activates Master Lock, the last resort to protect customer data from theft. I turned off my computer screen and put my phone down on the bedside table. They still think this is just a matter of money. They still think money can buy loyalty and self-respect after they've trampled on it mercilessly. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Wednesday dawned bright and clear. But for my old company, it was the end of the world. Exactly 72 hours after I placed my keycard on the meeting table, the system automatically entered Phase 3, cascading failure. Because the API gateways connecting to external banking partners were completely shut down, the system was unable to execute end-of-day balance reconciliation orders for the quarter. The amount of stalled transactions reached tens of millions of US dollars. My personal phone nearly exploded. It vibrated incessantly, to the point where the battery casing was burning hot. 2:15 p.m. Missed call from Edison, head of human resources. 14:22. Text message from Finn. Arya, I beg you, please answer the phone. No matter how much Helion pays you, we will triple that amount. We will give you a position as Vice President of Security, on par with Arlo. This is a direct order from the chairman of the board. Major partners are threatening to withdraw their investment, and the government has sent an inspection team to the office. 14:40. 5 missed calls from Arlo's number. 1500. A short message from an unknown number. I am Terrence Walsh, Chairman of the Board of X Corporation. Please call me back as soon as you read this message. The fate of the corporation rests in your hands. I completely silenced my phone and walked into Helion's large conference room to finalize the new security architecture for Helion's system with my team. The meeting room was filled with laughter and lively debates among brilliant minds. Wednesday, 6 p.m. As I left the meeting room, I looked up at the large television screen in the main lobby of the Helion building. The national television news broadcast showed a crowd of hundreds of customers gathered, shouting angrily in front of the headquarters of my former company. Security forces and police had to set up barricades to maintain order. The field reporter, microphone in hand, spoke urgently. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live at the headquarters of X Financial Group. Currently, an unprecedented technological incident in the history of the digital finance industry has completely paralyzed the entire system of this group for the past 24 hours. Users cannot withdraw money, cannot make transactions, and there are reports showing account balances at zero. The group's stock price has evaporated by nearly 60% in just 2 trading days, wiping out over $2 billion in market capitalization. The group's executive board is holding an emergency closed-door meeting with regulatory agencies to find a solution. Vega stood beside me, arms crossed, watching the TV screen, then turned to look at me, her eyes filled with admiration. Arya, you truly created an atomic bomb with just lines of code. They fired you on Monday, and by Wednesday, that entire billion-dollar empire had completely collapsed at her feet. I didn't create that bomb, Vega, I said softly, my eyes fixed on my reflection in the building's glass. It was their arrogance, their lack of respect for humanity, and their greed that created it. I was the only one who volunteered to hold on to it for the past 3 years to prevent it from exploding. When they kicked me out, they themselves detonated the fuse. Wednesday, 8 p.m. I was sitting in a small, quiet restaurant with Vega and a few team members celebrating the successful completion of Phase 1 of the Helion project. I took out my personal phone and turned it back on. Immediately, the screen lit up with a flood of notifications. I decided to call back Terrence Walsh, the powerful chairman of the board of directors of my former company, whom I had only seen from afar during my 3 years there. through live broadcasts of shareholder meetings. The call connected on the first ring, as if he had been holding the phone for hours waiting for me. "Miss Wesley." "Thank goodness you finally called back." Walsh's voice no longer had the arrogant, calm tone of a powerful tycoon often portrayed in the press. Instead, there was the ragged, hoarse voice of someone on the verge of total bankruptcy, trembling and full of pleading. "I'm listening, Mr. Walsh." "I received your message," I said, keeping my tone completely neutral, as cold as ice. "Miss Wesley, Arya, I know the whole story," Walsh gasped. On the other end of the line, I could hear the chaotic noise of the board members arguing, the desk phone ringing incessantly. "I've ordered a full review of the Human Resources and Technology Department's procedures. Your dismissal on Monday was a catastrophic mistake, an utter idiotic act by the executive team. I've officially signed the dismissal order and immediately fired Edison from Human Resources and Finn from Operations. They were evicted from the building 2 hours ago without any severance pay." Walsh paused to catch his breath, then continued in a pleading voice. "Our system is completely dead right now, Arya. The current engineering team under Arlo is utterly helpless. They say the system is locked by a master key algorithm and only you have the decryption key. We face the risk of losing our operating license tomorrow if the system isn't back up and running. I beg you, as someone who's been with the company for 3 years, please save the thousands of innocent employees here. Name your consulting fee. $500,000? $1 million? Just agree and the money will be in your account within 10 minutes. I was silent. The silence lasted 10 seconds, a suffocating silence that allowed Walsh on the other end of the line to hear his own heart pounding. I took a sip of wine, savoring the slight bitterness on my tongue, then slowly spoke. "Mr. Walsh, my emergency consulting fee isn't those numbers. My fee is $50,000 per hour." "Agreed. Absolutely," Walsh shouted into the phone, as if he'd just found a piece of driftwood in a flood. 4 hours is $200,000. I'll sign the transfer order right away." "Not yet," I interrupted him, my voice sharp, squeezing each word. "I have strict, binding conditions in addition to money. If you fail to meet even one condition, this conversation ends immediately. Just say it. The board of directors will fulfill any condition. Condition 1. I will work entirely remotely from Helion's office. I will never set foot in your building again. I don't want to breathe the same air as those who have disrespected me." "Okay, completely accepted." Condition 2. I will only provide written instructions and decryption diagrams via email. Your engineering team, under Arlo's supervision, must manually enter the commands and be responsible for their execution. I will not directly access your systems to avoid any future legal accusations of sabotage. This is a bit difficult for Arlo's team because they are very incompetent. But okay, we agree. Third condition, your corporation must publish a 1-page public apology in the business section of the nation's largest financial newspaper tomorrow morning. The letter must state, Chief Architect Arya Wesley has repeatedly sent warnings about system vulnerabilities and requests for increased staffing for the past 18 months, but the executive board deliberately ignored them, prioritizing them to optimize personal expenses. This collapse is entirely due to mismanagement by the executive board, and Arya Wesley is completely innocent and a highly ethical professional. Walsh froze. I could hear him gasp, and the shouts of the board members around him upon hearing this condition. "No, that will permanently damage the company's reputation. That letter will kill the stock price." "If you need time to discuss this, we can end the call here," I said coldly, my finger resting casually on the disconnect button. "But remember, the clock is ticking. Every minute that passes, you lose another $10 million and get closer to having your license revoked." "All right, silence." Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. I returned to Helion's office. Vega and my entire team were already there. Alice had prepared a highly secure video conferencing room for me, with 3 large screens displaying the code flow and network architecture of my old company. The central screen lit up, showing the central control room of my old company. The atmosphere was no different from a disaster relief center after an earthquake. File folders were scattered on the floor, paper coffee cups were broken, and young engineers with pale faces and dripping sweat were frantically typing on their keyboards in desperation. Sitting at the center of the meeting table was Arlo. He looked at the camera screen, seeing me sitting comfortably in Helion's opulent office, next to Vega, the powerful woman of our rival. His eyes showed a complex mix of emotions: humiliation, regret, envy, and a touch of pathetic hope. "Arya," Arlo began, his voice choked. "Thank you for joining the call. The system is currently—" "I don't have time for pleasantries, Arlo," I interrupted, my voice cold as a judge pronouncing a sentence. "We have exactly 4 hours, or 240 minutes. For every minute that passes without results, I will disconnect the call. Now, open the core configuration file of the central authentication server and go to line 14,028. Arlo hastily turned to the new head of the technical team who had replaced me. "Quick, open line 14,028. The young engineer trembled as he typed the command. On my screen, a bright red code snippet displayed an infinite loop error. "Do you see that code?" I spoke, my voice monotonously echoing through the conference room's loudspeakers, like the voice of a supreme being instructing mortals. "That's the automated defense algorithm I built. When you violently restarted the system on Tuesday, without entering the secure approval code from Section 11C, the system understood that the servers were being physically compromised by a hostile force. It automatically transferred all customer data to a virtual partition encrypted with an enhanced AES 256-bit algorithm. Any attempts at brute force cracking over the past 2 days only doubled the encryption key length. Good heavens! The former technical team leader muttered, his face drained of color. He realized that without me, this system would be permanently locked for 1,000 years to come. Now, listen carefully to my instructions. I typed a short command into my keyboard, sending them a secure text file via email. I've sent you a 12-step decryption scheme. Step 1. You must completely offload 40% of the backend server to reduce traffic pressure. Step 2. Enter the root privilege restart code I've written in the attachment. Step 3. Enter the following master key. I read a 64-character string of uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters, a string I'd memorized by heart for the past 3 years as a survival instinct. Arlo and his team followed my instructions like programmed robots. They didn't dare cough, didn't dare waste a second. With each completed step, a red dot on their network map turned green, signaling that the system was being partially revived. For those 4 hours, I wasn't simply guiding them through troubleshooting. I was giving them a crash course on the fundamentals of the system they possessed, knowledge I'd been pleading with them to teach others for the past 3 years. But they'd always brushed it off, saying, "I don't have time." Do you see the connection between the authentication layer and the financial transaction processing layer? I asked, my voice tinged with deep frustration as I watched the screen. If you had taken 5 minutes to read my Q3 risk assessment report from last year, you would have known that this structure has a dangerous linear lag. Overloading the system at the end of the quarter without reconfiguring the cache memory is the reason for the cascading failure happening so quickly. Technology never fails on its own. Only human ignorance and arrogance create errors. Arlo sat slumped over the conference table, his hands clasped together in front of his forehead. He didn't dare look directly at the camera anymore. He knew that every word I said was like a knife stripping away his incompetence, bureaucracy, and selfishness in front of all his subordinates and the chairman of the board, who was silently observing the meeting from an anonymous account. At exactly 11:58 p.m., the last light on the network map of his former company turned a brilliant green. A series of beeps, ting, 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 sounded simultaneously from hundreds of computers in their control room, signaling the activation of the entire trading system, mobile application, and gateways. 3 months later, a bright summer morning in Boston, I stood backstage at the main hall of the International Convention Center, where the 2026 Global Cybersecurity Summit was taking place. This was the same place where, 3 months earlier, I had met Vega as a solitary, invisible engineer seeking recognition. But this time, my position had completely changed. The large nameplate hanging above the hall entrance read, "Keynote Speaker Arya Wesley, CEO of the Independent Cybersecurity Advisory Unit, Helion Technologies Corporation. In just 90 short days since joining Helion, I, along with my initial team of 8, now bulging into 20 top experts, had made a resounding impact on the entire industry. The catastrophic collapse of my former company has become a classic case study taught in all technology risk management courses. The public apology from my former company's board of directors, published in the newspapers 3 months ago, serves as a golden guarantee of my superior competence. Large corporations, commercial banks, and major investment funds nationwide suddenly realized a harsh truth. Their technology systems could collapse at any moment if they continued to maintain a bureaucratic management structure that disregarded security engineers. And the only ones on the market with a solution to help them reconfigure their systems to avoid such a tragedy were Arya Wesley and the Helion Advisory Board. We secured 17 long-term strategic consulting contracts with Fortune 500 companies in the first quarter alone, generating massive revenue for Helion and making my division the fastest growing in the company's history. It's time, Arya. The stage is yours. Vega approached, adjusting my lapel microphone, her eyes brimming with pride. I stepped backstage. The moment my figure appeared under the spotlights of the grand stage, the entire auditorium of over 2,000 people, including tech experts, executives, and prominent investors from around the world, rose to their feet. A thunderous 2-minute round of applause erupted to welcome the new queen of cybersecurity. I stood in the center of the stage, confident in my impeccably tailored black suit, my hair neatly tied back, my gaze fixed on the crowd. In row 5, near the aisle, I saw 2 familiar faces. Arlo and the new CISO my old company had hired for a multi-million-dollar salary to restructure the dilapidated mess. Arlo sat there, hunched over in his auditorium chair. His face looked a decade older, his hair streaked with gray, his hollow eyes looking up at me on the big stage. He saw his former employee, the one he'd once patted on the shoulder and bestowed a $500 gift card upon, the one he'd thought he could easily discard to secure his position, now standing at the pinnacle of the world, respected and admired by thousands.